In the beautiful city of Imalo, there lived three best friends named Ayo, Bassi, and Chijioke. The three friends came from the same village and served the same master in the city of Imelo. However, 5 years after they were settled by their master to set up their own businesses, they were still struggling to become successful. Each time they traveled back to the village during the festive seasons to meet their families, they often felt ashamed and embarrassed because most of their peers returned to the village with new luxurious cars and designer clothes. But Ayo, Bassi, and Chijoke would always buy only a big loaf of bread for their parents. This made them very ashamed and often made them feel reluctant to travel to the village during the festive season, even though their parents understood their plight and would often encourage them and advise them to be patient in life. The dusty roads leading to their village were lined with palm trees, and the cheerful voices of children playing in the background made their visits bittersweet. However, they wanted to be like other wealthy men who returned from the city. As December approached once again, the three friends decided to meet at a club where they often met. The club was a lively place filled with colorful lights, loud music, and the aroma of grilled meat wafting through the air. Ayo and Chijioke got there first. Some minutes later, Bassi arrived in a very luxurious car. When Ayo and Chijioke saw Bassi coming down from the car, they were very shocked because they didn't have enough money to buy a motorcycle, so they wondered how and where Bassi got the money to buy an expensive car. When Bassi joined them at the table where they sat, he offered to pay for whatever they would drink and eat that evening. This also surprised Ayo and Chijioke even more because they knew that Bassi was also struggling like the rest of them. Out of curiosity, Ayo asked, "Bassi, who owns the car you came with? My guy?" Bassi laughed at his question and answered, "It belongs to me. I own it. I own it. I bought it. God has finally answered my prayers. This Christmas will be very different for us." "How?" "The last time I checked, we were all trying to make ends meet. How are you able to afford such a luxurious car in less than 1 year?" "Guy, it was like a miracle. I sincerely can't explain how it happened, but it can only be God. I got a contract to supply over 1,000 units of televisions and refrigerators for a new hotel. That's why I said it's a miracle," Bassi explained. Ayo and Chijioke rejoiced with him, and together they all celebrated Bassi's success. They all ate and drank to their fill, and Bassi cleared the bill, just as he had promised. However, Ayo didn't believe what Bassi said. He found it very difficult and impossible to accept that Bassi got a massive contract just like that without having to suffer and toil for it. The next day, Ayo went to see Chijioke at his shop in the market. Chijioke was attending to a few customers when Ayo came, so he sat and waited for Chijioke to finish what he was doing. As Ayo sat and waited, a lot of things were running through his mind as he saw many shops in the vicinity filled with so many customers who queued up to buy items, while some shops were dry as desserts, with their owners dozing off as they waited for customers. "Ayo, Ayo, Ayo, my very good friend. This would be the first time you would visit me during business hours. Hope all is well," Chijioke asked. Ayo took a deep breath and drew closer to Chijioke. Then he started talking to him in a very low, soft voice so that no one else could hear what they were discussing. "Did you see the car Bassi brought to the club yesterday?" I googled the price online. It is worth millions. He's a very lucky man to have landed such a contract. I'm sure that his life will never remain the same. He's now one of the big boys in town, Ayo said. Chijioke replied, Lucky? Do you seriously believe that Bassi won a contract so easily? The same type of contract that people compete for and even kill each other. Bassi expects us to believe he got it so cheap and easily. No, now. What do you mean? Do you think Bassi is lying to us about the source of the money? Ayo asked. Ayo looked left and right to be sure that no one was close by. Then he told Chijioke, I'm very confident that Bassi got involved in something illegal or spiritual to get the money. Even if it was truly a contract, there must be a sacrifice he made. Christmas is in 2 weeks, and Bassi will be traveling to the village with his new car, while the both of us would obviously join him in his new car with ordinary bread for our families, whereas Bassi would buy a lot of provisions for his family. What do you think our parents would say when they see Bassi with a new car, but we are still managing to survive? I guess you are right, but what can we do? Do you have any suggestions? Because I don't really like the way business is going, but patience is a virtue. Chijioke said, Well, you can remain patient in poverty until you die. Or, or you can follow me to Og State. I've heard tales of a very powerful witch doctor called Baba Ayo, who has the power to make anyone rich and wealthy. I'm very sure that Bassi met him as well because we have once discussed him. Chijioke became very scared and worried at the mention of a witch doctor. He came from a Christian home and he was also a devout Christian who didn't joke with the things of God. But this situation was enough to pressure anyone to do whatever it takes to get rich. Are you sure about this? The devil is tricky. His gifts always come with conditions, Chijioke said. Chijioke, what is your problem? What is the most difficult thing he can ask for? You know what? Follow me to see Baba and listen to what he has to say. Once he mentions anything that doesn't sit well with you, then you would leave his place and never return. I promise. Ayo's word cut through Shijioke's heart like a hot knife through butter. He thought about all that Ayo said and also recalled the shame and ridicule they faced whenever they traveled to the village. He knew that his parents may act comfortable, but deep down in their hearts, they wished he was as wealthy and successful as the other men who returned every year to the village. After thinking for a while, Chijioke accepted to follow Ayo to Og State, where Baba resides. The following weekend, Ayo and Chijioke embarked on a journey to the state to see the famous evil doctor. The journey took a whole day before they arrived at the village, where they were told that Baba resides. When they entered the village, it was very dark already, and the village was very different from all other villages they passed through. To find the man, it was an ancient village with old houses scattered around and elderly men and women living in them. Ayo and Chijioke found it hard to understand why it was only elderly people who were in the village and there were no children. The wind whispered through the narrow paths, carrying with it an eerie silence that heightened their anxiety. They continued walking down the village, following the direction of the man who had told Ayo about Baba. They had almost given up when they saw a very big and beautiful duplex at the edge of the village, covered with bushes and hidden in plain sight. The two men walked with fear in their hearts to the entrance of the duplex. The moonlight cast eerie shadows on the building, highlighting its grandeur against the dark, starless sky. They were shocked that such a magnificent building could be found in such a remote village. The cold night air carried the distant sound of a hooting owl, adding to their anxiety. They entered through the gate of the duplex and saw three beautiful women cooking at the corner of the house. The aroma of spices filled the air, mingling with the earthy scent of the surrounding bush. The women looked at the men and smiled, their white teeth gleaming in the dim light. Then they continued their cooking. Ayo and Chijioke didn't understand why they smiled at them, but they continued to the door of the duplex, which opened by itself when they got closer. "Come inside," a thick husky voice said to them. Chijioke was very scared. He held Ayo by the hand, and together they entered the duplex, where they met an old man seated on one of the luxurious sofas in the living room. The room was dimly lit by a single chandelier, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The old man gestured to the two of them to sit down, and then he asked them, "What can I do for you?" Chijioke was already trembling in fear where he sat. The walls of the living room were decorated with fresh human heads, their expressions frozen in terror, and the walls, which used to be white, were stained and painted with pure human blood. Ayo cleared his throat and said, "We are looking for Baba Owl. We are told that he has the power to grant us any wish and change our lives." The old man laughed hard at Ayo's statement. The sound of his laughter echoed eerily through the room, making the hair on the back of their necks stand on end. "Yes, it is true that I have the power to grant any wish and change your lives, but nothing goes for nothing. You must be willing to exchange something to get what you need. I am Baba Owl, the man that you seek. My friend and I are tired of poverty and the shackles of penury. We want wealth. We want to be rich like our peers. Please help us," Ayo said. Baba Ayo looked at the two men with a smile on his face, but his eyes were more focused on Chijik, who was visibly trembling. He looked at Chijioke closely, and his eyes rested on a small rosary hanging from his neck. But Chijioke was too focused on the blood on the walls to notice Baba Owl, who was looking at him. "I can make you rich, beyond your wildest dreams. Most of the prominent popular men you know came to me for their powers and riches. But like I said, there is a price to be paid." Chijioke looked at Ayo immediately. He heard Baba Ao say that there is a price to be paid, and he whispered to him, "I'm not ready to kill anyone because of..." But before he could finish his statement, Baba Ao started laughing heartily. The laughter seemed to bounce off the blood-streaked walls, growing louder and more sinister. "Yes, I see there is a price to be paid, but it doesn't mean you have to kill anyone. All you need is a white fowl, a bottle of pure alcohol, and cola nuts. Once you can get all these, I would make you rich beyond your wildest dreams." Ayo and Chijioke looked at him in surprise. They found it very strange that all it took to get rich was something so simple to afford. "Baba Ayo, are you sure that is all we need?" Ayo asked. "Yes, that is all you need. If you don't have the money for it, I can provide you with all that you need. I was placed in this position to help the less fortunate." Ayo was very happy at Baba Ayo's proposal, and Chijioke was even happier because it required no. They quickly agreed to his proposal, and together they went into a dark red room inside the duplex. There was a small candle which illuminated the room, and on one side of the room was an altar with many carved gods. The flickering flame of the candle cast long shadows of the gods, making them appear to move. Ayo and Chijioke were asked to remove their clothes and change into white linen, which they tied around their waists. Baba Ayo gave each of them a white fowl, a bottle of alcohol, and a piece of kola nut to chew. After they had finished chewing the kola nut, he told them to follow him while he led the way. He took them to a riverbank, where they knelt down. The river's surface shimmered under the moonlight, giving it an almost supernatural glow. Baba Ayo flung the white fowl around their heads, killed them, poured the blood on their heads while he made some incantations. The blood flowed from their heads down to their bodies, staining the white linen which they wore. He then took them to the back of the shrine. When they arrived, he asked them to pour the bottle of alcohol on the carved gods which were arranged inside the strange room. After they were done, he took them into another room, which contained almost a dozen coffins. He opened 2 of the coffins and told them, "You would have to sleep here for 3 days. Don't worry about what you would eat or drink. 3 days in the land of the spirit is like 3 hours. When you arise on the 3rd day, you become wealthier than you can ever imagine." Chijioke became skeptical and scared. He wanted to turn around, but it was already too late to turn back. "Let's just do this and get over with it. It's just 3 days. We can't come this far for nothing," Ayo told Chijioke, who was already shaking with fear. Chijioke listened to Ayo and accepted to enter the coffin for 3 days. Together, they slowly entered the coffins with their blood-stained lining and laid inside with their faces up. Baba Awo asked them to close their eyes. He blew a white powder on them, and they fell into a very deep sleep before he closed the coffin and left the room. 3 days later, Baba Ayo entered the room once again and opened the coffins. He blew the white substance on them again, and they woke up instantly. Then he took them back into the living room. "Congratulations! You are now billionaires. You would be rich beyond your wildest dreams. However, you need to come and see me to renew your rituals every 6 months." Ayo and Chijioke looked at each other and smiled. Then they thanked Baba Ayo and left the living room. When they entered the compound, they saw the 3 beautiful women once again. They were still cooking, while one of them was pounding something inside a very big mortar. But there was a party being held at the duplex. They saw a lot of popular personalities all seated inside the compound, eating, drinking, and dancing to music. The rhythmic drumming and melodious tunes added to the surreal atmosphere. Ayo and Chijioke were very hungry, so they decided to approach one of the women to give them some food before they journeyed back to the city of Imelo. When they got to where the women were cooking, they looked inside the pot, and they were shocked to their bones. The pot was filled with sweet-smelling pepper soup, but the meat inside the pot was human meat. They saw human hands, legs, ears, heads, and intestines, while one of the women who was pounding was actually pounding a newborn baby in the mortar, with blood splattered all over. Chijioke was extremely shocked and scared that he screamed the name of Jesus. Immediately he shouted, "Jesus!" All the women and the men in the compound turned and looked at him. "Do not ever call that name here," one of the women warned him, and tore the rosary, which was on his neck. "You have sold your soul to the devil for riches. You are now his," another woman told him. Ayo and Chijioke left the compound feeling shocked. As they walked back through the path they came from, they were surprised to see that everything was different. The village they had previously passed was now empty, and there was no one in the huts as they walked past until they got to the road where they boarded a bus back home. They were both too shocked to say anything to each other until they got to their various houses. The next day, when Ayo woke up, he saw a message on his phone. It was a credit alert of 100 million naira to supply a company with lots of his merchandise. Ayo quickly jumped out of the bed and went to the market to supply the merchandise. The joy of the money made him forget all that he went through at Baba Ayo's residence. Chijioke wasn't different. He also got a call that morning to sell his merchandise worth millions. Ayo and Chijioke became millionaires overnight. They bought very expensive luxury cars, which were far more beautiful than Bassi's car. The next time the three friends met at the club, Bassi was surprised when he saw Ayo and Chijioke. Everything about them showed that they were now very wealthy. Bassi asked them how they became very successful. They told him about the contracts that were coming in, but they didn't tell him about their visit to Baba Ayo. Bassi was very happy for them and thanked God for remembering them too. When it was Christmas, they all traveled to the village with their different cars. As soon as they arrived at the village, they began to spray money lavishly, bundles of new mint notes. Ayo and Chijioke bought a lot of gifts and provisions, which they gave to their families and the villagers. They spent so much money that they were given a chief title before they left. Their parents were very happy for them, and each time they asked them how they became very wealthy, Ayo and Chijioke would tell them the same story. However, Bassi was reserved in his expenditures. He spent his money wisely and would hardly indulge himself in any reckless spending, unlike Ayo and Chijioke, who were spending money lavishly and without control. Ayo and Chijioke were the talk of the town in the whole village before they left back to the city of Imelo. When the three friends returned to the city, Ayo and Chijioke became well known. They bought many houses and properties. They often traveled abroad to have fun and relax. They employed people to manage their businesses as they were getting contracts almost every week. Life was very sweet for them. 6 months later, Ayo was sleeping when he had a very scary dream in which he found himself with his mother and only sister inside a canoe in a very big ocean. The canoe bobbed gently at first, with the serene sound of water lapping against it, but then suddenly a great storm came, and the ocean started to rock the canoe violently. His mother and sister fell into the ocean, their screams echoing in the chaos. They couldn't swim and started calling out to Ayo to save them. But Ayo could only save one person. He became very confused because he didn't know who to choose. As he was still thinking of who to save, they both drowned in the ocean, and he woke up, breathing very hard and his heart beating very fast. He couldn't sleep again and stayed up until morning, his mind haunted by the dream. Chijioke also had a similar dream. In his, he found himself, his mother, and his only brother inside a helicopter, which was about to crash. The helicopter shook violently, the alarms blaring, and the ground loomed closer and closer. There were only 2 parachutes, and he had to choose one person between his mother and only brother. As he was trying to make a decision, the helicopter crashed, and they all died before he woke up. He woke up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding with fear. In the morning, the 2 friends met and narrated the dreams they both had. It then occurred to them that it had been 6 months since they did the rituals, and Baba Ao had instructed them to meet him every 6 months to renew the rituals. They both got prepared and set out on a journey to Ugg State once again to meet Baba Ayo. They recalled the scary things they witnessed the last time and were even more afraid. On their way, they bought a white fowl, a bottle of alcohol, and cola nuts for each of them that they would use for the rituals, just as they did the first time. When they got to Baba Ayo's residence, they saw the three women outside the house again. The women were still cooking, their mysterious smiles sending chills down Ayo and Chijioke's spines. Fear gripped them because they knew what was in the pot. They went into the duplex and saw Baba Awo seated in the living room as usual. The room had the same ominous air, with shadows playing tricks on the blood-stained walls. They greeted him and kept the items they had brought. Baba, we have come as you requested to renew our rituals and to also thank you for what you did for us. Thank you so much, Baba. Jesus would, but Baba Awo screamed at Chijioke when he mentioned the name of Jesus. Do not mention that name here again, or there will be consequences. I can see that you brought the items I requested, but there is a little problem. Ayo and Chijioke became confused at Baba Ayo's words. They asked him what the problem was, and what Baba Ayo said next shocked them to their bones. The gods do not require a white fowl and the items you bought. They told me that they have shown you what they need in your dreams, and you have to make a decision or lose the both of them. Ayo and Chijioke became very confused. They didn't understand what Baba Ayo meant, but when they remembered the dreams they both had, it became very clear to them. You have to choose who you would sacrifice to renew the rituals, or else you would lose the both of them and everything you've gotten from the gods. The two friends looked at each other in shock. They couldn't believe their ears. But you said we wouldn't kill anyone. You promised us that all we needed was a white fowl and some minor items, Ayo said angrily. I am simply a mouthpiece of the gods. I do not make decisions for them. You have 3 days to make your decision or face the consequences. Baba Ayo gave each of them a clay pot with a red cloth tied to it and instructed them to put the picture of the person they wanted to sacrifice into the clay pot in less than 3 days. Make sure nothing happens to this pot. If it should break, then your life will be over. Ayo and Chijioke returned to the city of Imelo with pain and regret in their hearts. They couldn't imagine losing any of their family members because the aim of getting rich was to give their families a comfortable life. They began to question the essence of the wealth if they would have to kill their family members who were supposed to enjoy the wealth with them. But it was too late. They had to make a decision or risk losing everything. After thinking for hours, Ayo suggested that they should meet Bassi and ask him where he got his own wealth from. Chijioke agreed with this idea, and together they went to meet Bassi at home. They narrated all that happened to him and pleaded with him to share with them the name of the witch doctor that helped him. Bassi was very surprised at their words and also disappointed in them. I didn't meet any witch doctor for my wealth. I've been saving for months for the car that I bought. It didn't just happen overnight. And the contract I got, it wasn't easy either. I've been chasing that contract for many months before God helped me. I'm a true Christian who loves God, and I would never meet the devil for any reason, no matter how desperate I may be. Ayo and Chijioke felt helpless. Chijioke felt ashamed of himself for listening to Ayo. when he suggested that they should meet Baba Ayo, but it was too late for him already to revert his decision. I would advise you guys to go back to God and beg for his forgiveness. At this point, I think he's the only one that can save you. The two friends left Bassi's house in regret. They decided to drive to the nearest church to seek assistance, but on their way to the church, they had a very terrible accident and they both lost their lives. Their bodies were burnt beyond recognition. All that they had was destroyed mysteriously, and their families gained nothing from their existence. The moral lesson of this story reminds us that it is not always right to assume that our friends made wealth through illegal means and thereby use that as encouragement to pursue wealth in illegal ways. True success comes from hard work and integrity, not shortcuts that lead to regret. As you go home for Christmas, do not be pressured by what anyone has to show off. Always be content with what you have. There is great gain in contentment. Do not meet the devil for assistance, no matter how desperate you may be. The price to pay is always more than the things you stand to gain. And don't be pressured by what other people are doing. Don't let peer pressure push you into doing something you are going to regret just to please other people. The story of Ayo, Bassi, and Chijioke serves as a powerful reminder that true success is built on hard work, integrity, and patience. We must resist the temptation to pursue wealth through dishonest or harmful means, as the price of shortcuts often outweighs any temporary gains. Always be content with what you have and trust in the process of honest effort. Never let envy or peer pressure drive you into making decisions that could lead to regret and destruction. Thank you for watching my channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting and inspiring stories. Stay tuned for more exciting videos right here on our channel. See you in the next one. In the village of Zoko lived a popular food vendor called Zena. Zena was a beautiful woman popularly known in the village for her delicious and tasty meals. She had a food store at the village market painted in bright yellow and decorated with colorful flowers at the entrance. The aroma of her food often wafted through the air, drawing people from all corners. Inside the store, clay pots and woven baskets neatly lined the shelves, adding a homely touch. Zena was very proud of her cooking and always wanted to make sure she was the best cook in the whole village. Everyone sang praises of how tasty Zena's food was, and she had customers trooping in and out from every part of the village, including women, children, and most especially married men. You know the secret and strange thing about Zena's food? The secret is that whenever a married man tastes Zena's food, they will never want to have a taste of their wife's meal at home. They all gathered every day at Zena's restaurant to eat her food, often sitting under the shady baobab tree nearby where she had set up wooden benches and tables. Almost all the married men in the village preferred Zena's food to their wife's food. Most times, when their wives served them food at home, they would say, "No, I cannot eat this food. This food is not as delicious as Zena's. You have to learn how to cook like Zena because I cannot be eating poison when Zena's restaurant is there." This continued to happen in almost all the households in the village. All the married men no longer ate their wives' food. They now preferred Zena's food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This was causing a lot of misunderstandings in their homes. The men even went as far as telling their wives to go to Zena to learn how to cook from her because they wondered how Zena made her meals so tasty and delicious. The wives of these married men could no longer take it anymore, and they decided to have a meeting to find out what they could do to make their husbands come back to them and start eating their meals. As they gathered in the village streets near the old well under the shade of a giant mango tree, they started asking each other, "What do you think we should do, my fellow women?" "I think we should go and find out what Zena uses in her meal that our husbands no longer eat from us," one woman suggested. Another woman suggested that Zena might have a secret ingredient that she uses for cooking and that they should go and spy on her. After deliberating for some time, they decided that spying on her was not the solution. They agreed that what they would do was go to Zena's restaurant and humbly beg her to please stop serving their husband's food whenever they visited her restaurant. They all agreed to beg Zena, and so they headed to Zena's restaurant to speak with her. When they arrived at Zena's restaurant, the sight of her steaming pots and the sound of cheerful chatter greeted them. They started to speak to her. One of the women said, "Zena, please, we are here to beg you. We know you know how to cook very well. You are the best cook in the village. We are not doubting that. But please, we are here to beg you to please stop serving our husbands your meal. Whenever our husbands come to your restaurant, please can you direct them back home to eat our meals instead? Our husbands no longer eat from us, and it is affecting our marriage. We have come to you as women to please help us in this situation." Zena responded, "What do you mean by that? Are you saying I should chase away my customers because you want your husbands to eat in your house? Am I the one that said you shouldn't know how to cook? Did I drag your husbands to my restaurant to eat my food? Please, if you don't have anything meaningful to say, leave my restaurant. I am a very busy person." The women continued to plead with Zena, but she chased them all away, telling them to go and look for how they could hold their husbands and not come back to disturb her again. The women left Zena's restaurant feeling so frustrated and disappointed. They were helpless and didn't know what to do, and they decided to all go back home, hoping that one day the secret to Zena's meals would be revealed and their husbands would come back to them. Zena's business continued to flourish with more and more customers trooping in and out, to the extent that almost all the men now gathered at her restaurant every day. A particular married woman in the village called Luma, whose marriage was not even up to 6 months, started having issues in her home. Do you know why? Because her husband had started eating Zena's meal. From the very first day her husband tasted Zena's food, he no longer ate the wife's meal anymore. The woman was wondering what could be going on, and she decided to go see her father in the neighboring village to tell her father everything that had been happening. She said to herself, "I cannot take this anymore. My marriage is not even up to 6 months, and now my husband no longer eats my food. I will talk to my father to help me." The thing is that Luma's father is a spiritualist who has the power to foresee things. And so Luma set out to the neighboring village to speak with her father. When she got there, she said to her father, "Baba, your daughter is not happy. My husband no longer eats my food. There is a popular food vendor in the village of Zoko that my husband now enjoys eating from, and this is causing a problem in my marriage. Baba, please help your daughter." Luma's father set out to work immediately. He consulted his oracle and saw that Zena's case was a strong one to handle, and he decided to visit the restaurant himself. Luma's father arrived at Zena's restaurant, and immediately His eyes locked onto Zena's restaurant, and immediately his eyes locked onto Zena. She smiled, and he knew that Zena was aware of who he was. Zena said to Luma's father, "Ah, Baba, you are welcome to my restaurant. You are just in time for a special treat. My food is the most delicious in the village." Zena held a steaming bowl of her famous food, and Luma's father's stomach growled in anticipation. His mouth was watering, and he wanted to have a taste of this food that had a beautiful aroma, but he knew better than to accept her offer. Luma's father now said to her, "You are busy, right? I need to speak with you." Zena responded with a smile, "Of course, Baba. I'm always happy to help, but first let me offer you a bowl of this delicious food of mine. Once you taste my food, you will never remain the same again, Baba." Luma's father said to her, "The main reason why I am here is for you to confess Zena. You know what you have been doing in this village, and I am here to make sure your secret is exposed. If you don't make an attempt to confess, you will regret it, Zena." Zena started being harsh to Luma's father, and she said to him, "Baba, I don't know what you're talking about. In this restaurant, all we do here is sell delicious food. I'm sure you must have heard about me by now, so I don't know what you're saying. Don't come to my store to accuse me wrongly. If you want to eat, please eat, and if you don't want to eat, don't spoil my business. Just get up and leave." Luma's father responded to Zena, "I am warning you for the last time. You are causing so much pain in marriages through your food. Men no longer eat their wives' food. Confess now before I make it an open case." Zena responded, "You are just being too paranoid, old man. What is all this talk about me holding people's husbands? Am I the one that told their wives not to know how to cook? I don't know what you're talking about." Luma's father saw how stubborn Zena was, and he decided to do a silent incantation to get Zena to confess. Immediately he touched Zena, and Zena started screaming, and Zena started screaming and shouting, "I am sorry. Oh, I am sorry. Yes, 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 I will confess. I will confess." She continued, "I've been using my menstrual flow to make meals to get all the married men in the village to like only my food. This is what happened." Zena started narrating the reason why she started using her menstrual flow. She narrated that a long time ago, in that same village, she was a lady in her late 40s looking for a husband. All the suitors that came for her all turned her down because of her size. The most painful part was that all the younger slim girls in the village started mocking her. The worst thing that made me decide to do this evil was that one day a suitor came to ask for my hand in marriage. When the suitor arrived, all of a sudden, he decided not to marry me anymore, but instead chose a slim girl in that same crowd. Instead of the villagers supporting me, they started mocking me, telling me that I was cursed and could never get a husband who would love me. Because of this, I decided to visit a spiritualist. The spiritualist told me to use my menstrual flow in that local pot I was holding and add it to the meals I cook every day. Any married man in the village that comes across my meal would never taste their wife's meal again, except for mine. Zena continued, "That was how I started using my menstrual flow as a secret ingredient in cooking. That is why most of the married men in the village of Zoko no longer eat their wives' food, but instead eat my food." After confessing, she started pleading with the villagers, "Please forgive me. I was frustrated and pained. That was why I went into this evil act of mine." The villagers were so mad at Zena that they started chasing her. They said they would burn her and banish her from the village. She was told never to set foot in the village of Zoko again. Zena was banished from the village of Zoko, and that was how the secret of Zena's meal was exposed. The moral of this story is that we should all be careful of what we eat and where we eat, especially if we are not sure of the source of that meal. Secondly, we shouldn't repay evil with